welcome to today's event, Understanding Tantrums and Whining. I was just saying I am in the big threenager stage in my house, so I'm so excited to be a listener. But at Auggie, our mission is to make parenthood easier, whether that's through expert recommendations, a supportive community, or simply helping you find the right tools at the right time. So for me, this is perfect timing. And one of the biggest challenges parents face is navigating their child's big emotions, especially when tantrums and whining come into play. We know how overwhelming these moments can feel when your child is melting down in the grocery store or refusing to put on their shoes. It's easy to feel helpless and frustrated, but the truth is these behaviors are natural. They're part of childhood and a powerful opportunity to foster emotional intelligence and strengthen your connection with your child. So that's exactly why we're here today. A few housekeeping notes. One, this session is being recorded and you'll get the recording in your DMs in the Auggie app. And then lastly, just feel free to use the Q&A. And on that, I'm going to let our amazing experts introduce themselves. So Jenny, you're first on my screen. Why don't you kick it off?
Hi, everyone. Really excited to be here. We had a great first session with this crew that you see here today, and it inspired us to be like, let's keep it going. So yeah, we all can relate to the topic at hand. And I guess I'll introduce myself in that vein that while I'm an early childhood educator, teacher, and former director of daycares and preschools, what really inspires my work is my current career in motherhood, and just using all the things that I learned both in my background educationally and in my career, and seeing how hard that is to do in real time once you're a mom. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here, and more on this later, but I've also founded a brand called Charm Spring, meant to help support parents and their young children. And it naturally comes up in sort of some of my responses, so you'll hear about it. And I've also co-founded Union Square Play, so if you're ever in the city, please come by.
The best. Okay, Mandy, you are next on my screen. Hi.
Hi, I'm Mandy Grass. I own the company The Family Behaviorist. I do virtual parent coaching. I work with school systems. I was a special education teacher, and then I've been a behavior analyst for 10 years. And I have 3 of my own daughters, and they are almost 9, 6, and 3. So I am right there with you as well.
You're in it with us. All right, Slumberkins ladies. Hi.
Hi, I'm Kaylee and this is Kelly, and together we are the co-founders of Slumberkins. We're also by trade, I was a special education teacher before starting Slumberkins and a mom of 4, so I'm a little bit ahead of the gang here. I have a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, a 9-year-old, and an 8-year-old, so in completely separate stages, but have been there, done that with all things tantrums and whining. And I will say some of even my 7 and 8-year-old, or my 8 and 9-year-old, still have to have some of the reminders from the early days. But
Okay, good. So that's what we have to look forward to. Great.
yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't stop. It just turns into a different way of tantruming. It's like eye rolling and, whatever is the word of the choice at school that day, skibbity or whatnot. Yeah, and I have 2 boys as well, 8 and 9. And my background, like Kaylee said, is marriage and family therapy and school counseling. And Slumberkins, we just try to show up to support parents in, supporting their kids with emotional health and wellness through tools and content and different things. So excited to be here.
Excited to have you again, and you do it so well. Okay, the dreaded public meltdown. I'm having PTSD because we had this over the weekend at the supermarket. So I guess, Jenny, I'll kick it off with you, but like, what are tools that you have in your toolbox to anticipate and prevent the meltdown before they happen? Is that even a thing?
Yes, and I also have PTSD. I didn't mention that I have a 5 and 7-year-old, and yes, I totally agree with Kaylee and Kelly that it just changes shape and form. but they're still there. I think even as adults, like there's times recently I'm like, I'm having a tantrum right now.
Yeah.
Anyway, that also helps me that it is like a human reaction and we need tools. But anyway, to anticipate them ahead of time, like I think that tantrums are often related a lot to basic needs. And I think the extremity in which we see tantrums can, you know, be anticipated when we know our child's tired, hungry, we've done back-to-back stuff. And so kind of using that as a tool, like preparing our child with simple expectations, you know, when it's around that time, like, you know, just this weekend, we were back to back for a good reason, not to just like overpack their day, but we had birthday parties and then we were seeing grandma and grandpa. And so I know my younger one, you know, the shock factor really sets her off. And so reminding her in between, you know, we're going into grandma's now and we're going to spend a little time before dinner, you know, instead of her walking in being like, oh, now we have to like be all like polite and whatever it is that she associates with like walking in and not being fed right away. So I think using that is really helpful. And you know, the visual routine board that Charm Spring sells, I do use that. I'm not trying to plug, but I think it helps to prepare my younger daughter, especially to know what to anticipate in her day. And it actually alleviates a lot of those tantrums that come with just feeling surprised by the next, you know, outing or event or whatever it is that we're doing that are often the worst times for us to experience a tantrum and often comes at those times, right? So
Yeah. I think where I made the mistake is he was hungry going into the grocery store, and that is like being like high going into the grocery store. It's like the worst combination. So
yeah.
for Haley and Kelly, and a question came in that I'm going to kind of tie in, but like, how can parents acknowledge their child's feelings while setting firm but compassionate limits? And just to connect it to the Q&A, someone wrote in, my 4-year-old has really big feelings. He's stubborn, and when you ask him to do something, he'll shout no, or you can't make me, or I'm not doing it. How do you respond to this type of behavior? So I guess like acknowledging when they say things like that, and then acknowledging just like the general feelings around a tantrum.
My biggest like tool that I use with all of my kids at all of the ages is the phrase, anytime there's a big feeling that comes up, or I can just sense that they're triggered or anything, I'll just say, it completely makes sense that you're feeling this way, and just completely validate the emotion and the feeling. And that seems to, at least specifically for my daughter, who's the youngest of, you know, she has 3 older brothers. I think a lot of times she feels a little lost in the shuffle, but it definitely she kind of takes a breath and like, okay, you at least like see and acknowledge, and then we kind of are able to actually get into what's going on. And then I think the with the expectations and boundaries, that's just something I totally agree with Jenny. It's something that you do yourself a huge favor when you like set expectations up front, so that they know what to expect. Kids, we really believe that kids do well when they can. And if they know what to expect and they know what's going on, then they will try their best in any given environment.
Yeah. And what I would add to that is just knowing my son is that way. My younger son, who inspired our hammerhead creature, which is our resident Mad's Not Bad and conflict resolution guy. So I have the
we have him.
Yeah. And one thing that I'll note, aside from even just, you know, trying to set up the boundaries and all of these things for kids, is I notice in myself, especially with him, because that's not my personality. Like, I was a compliant good girl. And so when my son's like, no, I won't do it, and I'm going to do what I want, that triggers me very quickly.
Yeah.
And so one thing that I've been working on a lot is noticing when something like that is like the most triggering to me, and the better able I am to not take it personally, not say, you know, not let that comment pull me into now a power struggle with him of like, yes, you will. And then it just escalates, right? It's breathing, it's calming down, maybe taking a little bit of space so that it doesn't escalate in that moment, and then coming back around like, hey, now that I need to do this or that, like first we're going to do this, then we're going to do that. Or something like, because you're speaking to me in this way disrespectfully, either you change your attitude or we're gonna walk out of here right now.
I like
Be
that
ready
as
to
a
follow
choice,
through. Yeah.
Yeah. And I completely relate that like how my son responds to certain things is the opposite of how I would. So Mandy, I guess a question for you is how can parents respond in a way that doesn't reinforce the tantrum and isn't like to what Kelly was saying, like a reflection of what you would expect to hear? And how can you change your language to, I don't know, make it applicable more for your toddler?
Sure. So, in behavior analysis, there's 4 functions of behavior: attention, escape, access to something tangible or automatic or sensory. So, one of the things we're going to want to do is keep in mind the function of the behavior. If the function's to get out of the store, we're going to address it differently than it is to get access to a lollipop than if it is just to get it under mom and dad's skin. One thing that we can do in those situations, though, it's called errorless modeling. So, let's say he wanted the chips and he was like, I want chips now. You say, oh,
Yeah.
let's try it. You could say, can I have the chips, please? And in that scenario, my kids love those juice boxes, like those character heads. I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with them.
That
To
they
which I'll
leave at the
say,
front of every supermarket.
Yeah.
If like that would be helpful for a parent. Yeah.
right. But so I'll be like, okay, so we're going to put this in the cart and like we will buy it depending on behavior. My littlest one just says behavior. She's like, oh, gotta have good behavior. I'm like, yep, exactly. So, but modeling appropriately requesting, or like, I'm tapped, I want to get out of here, or like, are we almost done? Or can I ride in the cart, or whatever that might be. Modeling. And like Haley had said, to validate and replace. Like, yeah, dude, so my kids will be like, is it a pickup day? I'm like, no, we gotta go in, and like the face changes and everything. So validating that, like, yep, it is annoying and it's okay to be annoyed. You can be like, I wish we weren't doing this, whatever, some of those sort of things. So validate the feeling and replace the behavior. And then proactively, I don't know why, I guess I'm stuck on the grocery store in my head, but proactively thinking about incompatible behavior. So the grocery store is particularly difficult with my 3 kids. I don't know who did it before there was the fire engine. I don't know that I could. So I had like 2 in there, but one of them likes to write the list. So on the way, there's like, tell me the things we need, and she's checking it off. And one is scanning for me. Marley's
Yeah.
eating something. So if they have an incompatible behavior or something else to focus on, what are some of the proactive strategies when we find those patterns?
Yeah. And somebody's writing into the chat about like a specific tool for calming down. And Jenny, I feel like I learned this from you, but correct me if I didn't, like the fingers and the candles and blowing them out. Was that you?
No, I don't think so.
Oh,
I was about to say yes, but it wasn't related to this. I do a candle thing, but I don't think it's related to this.
so like my toddler had trouble like understanding what a deep breath in and a deep breath out was, but like blowing out the candles on a cake seemed to resonate. And I saw someone post, I thought it was Jenny, about like holding up 2 fingers and pretending those are candles and letting him take a deep breath and physically blowing out those 2 candles. Anyway, I want to make sure I'm connecting it to the specific
I do
question.
that a little bit too, like, and if you can make it a
Right.
joke. So yesterday, my 3-year-old was like, so I was like,
Yeah.
okay, blush. And I was like, oh, it's not out. Oh, it's not
Yeah,
out, to like get her to like
exactly.
take a sit and like, oh, okay, now it's
Maybe
out.
I learned it from you.
No, I definitely didn't learn it from me, but I learned it from somebody and I did it that way.
Okay. Someone said sometimes my 3-year-old will ask for something and my response is an immediate yes. He can throw a fit. Right before he throws a fit, I have the intention to say yes, but starts to throw a tantrum. And I feel like I need to double down and not give in. If I do change my mind, is that encouraging the tantrum? If I have him calm down and he asks nicely, can I say yes? Or should I stick to my first answer no matter what? This is so common in my household. And honestly, to add a layer to it, because like sometimes me and my husband disagree on how to handle this. So feel free, anybody who wants to jump in on this question first.
I think for me in this situation, I would use what I called in my classroom, or a teaching technique that teachers use, is metacognition, over kind of modeling what you're thinking as the parent or the adult. So like, even that if they're about to throw the tantrum, or if they start to throw the tantrum, you could say, oh man, like it's kind of becoming a sports cast over what's going on in front of you. And then you can say like, oh man, yeah, I really want to be able to get you that, but we can't do that if that's how we're asking. And just starting to kind of say what you're thinking out loud so that they know what you're thinking, and then how and why they can get to maybe the answer turning into a yes. I don't know if you have.
I think that's
better example of that.
great one. I'm just like playing back in my head how fast everything moves with my little hammerhead. And even when I try to do that, I think I've bent so many times and been like, fine, just take it. And you know, that we have a little bit of a pattern that is really now on me to have the capacity to stand up and hold a boundary and know that that's going to be okay. And I think it ends up being simple in like how we can respond to it, but the patterns that we create with our children are sort of like also indicative of how we feel about having a boundary, how we feel about, you know, being told no. And you know, boundaries are something that I'm working on. And so I think I've even had a conversation. He's older now, so he's 7, but you know, like, hey, part of what I need to do is when I say no, I'm setting a boundary and I'm saying no, and I'll give you some chances. But then once we hit that line, I'm going to have to hold to it. And it's just really hard because then we get into the thing. So I feel you. I'm like in the same thing, and you can kind of overthink it to death, but I think that's a really good way to help kids just get an understanding of what truly is going on, instead of making assumptions that you're doing it to punish them, or you're doing it because you're, you know, mad at them or something. It clears the air to like, this is the reaction to the consequence of behaviors or ways that we're behaving.
Yeah.
Can
Jenny?
I just add something to that? I feel like it was combining both what Mandy and I'll just say you guys, like Callie and then Kaylee. I just feel like I'm gonna botch it. But and Slumberkin said,
I do every time we talk.
Just call us Slumberkins.
Yeah, the slumber twins.
oh, I love that. I think, you know, Mandy was saying all these sort of tools that we can do, you know, preemptively, sort of to empower, like making the list. And then you guys were talking about just, you know, that there are natural consequences to certain behaviors. I think something that helps me that actually combines the two of those things is, you know, because it's so hard when they're in the throes and we're like, you know, kind of, you know, giving the impression like, you know, because of what you're doing now, like you might not get it. That I feel like is hard. At least I'm thinking of my younger, it piles on for her. And then she's like mad at herself and it just layers. But giving choices in those moments, like you're having a hard time and I'm having a hard time and you want the lollipop. How do you think we can get through this type of thing? They're not going to obviously, or giving choices, like we can take a minute now and blow out the candles, or, you know, I can come next to you, and, you know, basically giving choices of the behavior to let them know that like, whichever way we go might have, you know, kind of dictate the next course of action. I just want to say before I lean into that another thing that I remember in those moments is really that it's not my job to manage other people's judgments. And like, you really have to kind of, so just that is off my plate truly in those moments. That has come with time. So for anyone thinking about like, this is all very easier said than done in those moments, I think I'm sure Mandy and the Slumber Twins also do that. Like we've learned that like you cannot manage yours, your kids, and other people walking by's emotions, judgments, feelings, and you really have to be in that moment with your kid. I don't love to give scripts because I think it needs to be authentic to everybody, but I think narrating like we're both having a really hard time. We can get the lollipop and not really learn much, or we can take a minute, calm down, and get the lollipop when we're ready type of thing. You know, it's not punishing and it's narrating and acknowledging the realness of it, but also giving everybody a choice and like kind of putting you all on the same team, depending on how many kids you have tantruming at the moment, but hopefully it's just one.
Mandy?
Yeah, to answer the question, I would say yes. Like for me in that scenario, especially in public, it might just be modeling the appropriate behavior. So like, again, if it is the lollipop and the kid's throwing the tantrum, instead of just being like, okay, fine, here's the lollipop, you would just model like, can I please have a lollipop? Or can I get a treat, please? 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 Oh, I love the way you asked. Sure. And so like you're getting, for behavior terms, which doesn't sound great, but like an inch of compliance before reinforcing. The only thing thing I would be careful of, and not that I haven't, do as I say, not as I do, try not to give it on the heels of the colossal meltdown. Like, try not to do it while they're on the floor. Like, all right, here's the lollipop. They'll pop up. Again, definitely have done it, so no judgment. But if you're like, oh, it seems like you could say, can I have a lollipop? Can I have a lollipop, please? Oh, sure, thanks for asking so much, right? So at least you're modeling how to get access.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And just like to add in the second part of that question, which is like, what do you do if you want to hold the boundary, to Kelly, your point, which I am a big fan of, because like if you don't waver, they automatically trust you. So if you're gonna set that boundary, they know that you then won't, budge on it. But sometimes my partner is like, we're in a rush, and I see someone else writing in about it being in a rush, and how do you handle this when you need to get to school, which I'll get to after. But like, how do you handle the differences with your partner, and communicate that to them when like you're both in the thick of it?
Well, we're both divorced.
I am too, and I was gonna say the same thing. Like, just do it. Like,
Jenny?
Definitely have conversations before it escalates too far. No, I'm sorry, guys.
No, this is so, trust me, that is probably one of the most relatable things you could say on this call.
When the mental load goes like this and you're not on the same page, like it is the recipe for needing to go to therapy, getting on the same page, aligning. And then sometimes, therapy can be really good in a moment of repair for a relationship. And other times it can open the eyes over like, whoa, this isn't gonna work.
But I would say from a family systems perspective, like when you are around your children and that this is happening real time, right? Like obviously the conversations beforehand of like how we're going to handle that if we have a disagreement, I would want to have those conversations so that you can default to those, because really what we're looking for is solid leadership between the parents, the people in charge, right? And anytime they're seeing that dissonance or that we're not on the same page, it just allows for a little bit more, it'll bring some chaos, right?
Yeah.
So it's really like, I would say in that situation, because I am your husband, I'm the one who's like, oh, we're in a rush. Let me just tie your shoes, or I'll pick it up. It is forever the thing that I'm going to be working on is boundaries and not doing that, because I struggle with that myself, So in that moment, I would be defaulting to the partner who holds stronger boundaries and say, well, that is, we're going with that right now, and align with the
And then be together
and
for
then,
the meltdowns.
and then hide behind them.
Yeah, literally. Daddy said that. Jenny?
I want to reiterate that I agree with, knowing sort of the audience. Ideally, you're having any sort of like dissonance, not with your kids as the audience. And I know that's easier said than done in a moment like just this week when I was like, kitchen's closed, like, it's 8 p.m. You should have been in bed. And then like I come out of the shower and like one of my daughters is eating like chocolate covered banana slices, which are so good. Anyway, or like my husband will like be noshing on his, like he's a snacker. So anyway, that has happened before. He hasn't heard me set the boundary. However, I've done something anyway. And in those moments, I so badly want to be like, Daddy, I said the kitchen's closed or something like that. And I will say times when I can't help myself, I will do it playfully to kind of model that there are going to be times that the people in charge have dissonance, right? Like I can't just be like, ignore that I just said that and Daddy took a different route. So I might be like, I don't think you heard me, Matt, but we all agreed that, we weren't going to have any more dessert. That might be something I do in the moment. And then later we will set like, I'm sorry, but no more food after X 7:30 p.m., for next time. But I will say that the biggest motivator for me in like swallowing my pride in those moments or, picking my battles is exactly what Slumber Twins just said, which is when we're not modeling that we're sturdy and confident as a team or on our own, just even not in our marriage, just even if it's you in that moment of like the throes of a tantrum, it's adding, like you said, to their chaos. They don't feel as safe. Like they attach mommy and daddy are now having a thing because of me. So it can create toxic narratives. It can create a feeling of like, my feelings are too much. They're now impacting my grown-ups' feelings and behavior. And it can just have this domino effect. So if you ever needed a motivation to like not take, to take the high road and swallow your pride, let that be it. I am not good at that unless my kids are involved. So that's really been motivating to me in those moments. And then afterward being like, oh my God, Matt, that was so hard for me to swallow, but like, I wanted to strangle you. Like, can we like figure this out for next time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that this conversation is about tantrums and whining, so I promise I will get us back there. But one thing that I am proud to say that I started last week, and I've already seen a change, is a weekly one-on-one, not at 9 p.m., but during the day. My husband and I each took 30 minutes out of our day. I sent him an agenda in advance. It had like, his schedule, my schedule, our son, we're expecting. So like we have to talk about, are we getting a doula, and like stuff like that. And there was like I forget what we called it, but like any disagreements we wanted to talk about if like in the moment that we didn't feel like we're handled. And it was game changing for us, because usually, like, how moms for the most part are, we're laying in bed and we're like, it's 10 p.m, they're falling asleep, and we're like, but wait, like, did you or like, did you text the floor guy, or like the showers need to be regrouted, or like whatever it is. And this was a really great reset for us. So if you have that luxury and the time during the day to carve it out, I highly recommend treating your partner like an employee. I want to, because we talked, I think because divorce came up, people are just writing in a little bit about having blended families, which I came from one, and it's really hard to go from different households. So I just want to call this out, and feel free to jump in. But I have a blended family, and they're saying they have a 2-year-old and then an 8-year-old, and the 8-year-old's extremely emotional and sensitive at the beginning of the weeks, needing extra time, and feels that he never gets enough and is lower priority than the toddler. We do connect and spend high quality time often. What are some key phrases to share, and how to reset expectations and boundaries? It took me like 3 days, I think, to like fully acclimate when I was going back and forth personally. So I obviously am not an expert. I'm going to let you speak, but any tips? It's tough.
I really want to dive in here because of a recent thing.
Oh,
If I can, putting like, of course, that hardship aside, which it's very real, like the blended family component and the differences in households and people involved. When a child, correct me if I'm wrong, it was that one child feels like they're sort of like becoming like on the back burner, second tier in certain situations. Any sort of talk like that, our reflex is to like convince or fix or be like, where's to blame? I recently shared about this, but it's really about what's behind it for that child. What he is feeling in that moment, he or she, is, I'm not as important. I'm not, as loved. And so thinking about that, can really help, because it won't always be equal, right? Like there's different needs for different childs, there's different ages, they're just different scenarios. So instead of trying to be like, no, you both have the same time from me, this or that, like you can say that to your blue in the face. That's not what this child feels. So something like, I think what you're telling me is, when I have to pay all this attention to the younger sibling, that you don't feel that you're as important, or, and not with projecting, but sort of like, what I did with my daughter, just as an example, and then you can use this authentically to you. She was sharing that her best friend had a beautiful leotard. And she's like, she had the most beautiful leotard. And instead of me being like, you should be happy for her, all the stuff, and I shared this, I was like, you're saying that sadly. Like, what did that make you feel? And she's like, that I wasn't as beautiful. I was like, when you hear that voice about Nellie, or when I'm paying attention to Tess, and you'll be, I'll tell Tess I'm proud of her, and you're like, but you're not proud of me. That voice is Nellie saying not nice things to Nellie. You have to say, of course I'm as loved. Of course I'm as beautiful. Of course I'm enough. And so take from there, instead of, trying to like chase the equal, the same, you will never get there, and say to this older child, I think what you're telling me is you don't feel as important, loved, whatever it is that feels authentic. It really like creates this foundation of, even when mommy has to pay more attention to my sibling, that's okay. I'm still as loved. You know, those are the narratives we want to create in the moment throughout their whole life when their feelings second tier.
Yeah.
I love that. And thank you so much for saying that. And I would just second that and reiterate from a Slumberkins perspective, this is why we created each one of the characters. So when you read in our, in our characters, they all have affirmations and they try to go to the heart. What Jenny is talking about here is like the need behind the behavior that's driving this behavior potentially, right? Like this, negative, what we say is like a negative core belief, or we want them to be an adaptive core belief. So we want them to know that, oh, even though mom is paying attention over there, it doesn't change the core of what's true about my relationship to my mom or my dad, my relationship to myself. And when that is solid and we can help remind them of that so that they don't pick up these ideas like, oh, I have to be X, Y, and Z to get attention from mom because I have a toddler sibling and I have to be achieving, and that's the only way. And it's not like you say these things, it's like they pick it up on their own. So speaking it out and seeing the need behind the behavior is so, so powerful. And anytime we can bring that forward, I just really, again, like Jenny said, feeling into what it is for your child, because it can be very distinctly different for each person, and the motivation and the feeling behind it and the need can be very different. And we always say within Slumberkins, if you run into an affirmation from a character that makes you go like, oh, I needed to hear that, or it just touches you, that's like your little ding, ding, ding. You've got something there that you is probably showing up in your life and in your relationship with your kids too.
Yeah. I want, Mandy, unless you have anything to add, please go if you
You're
do.
good. No, you're
If-
good. Go ahead.
If not, I wanted to kind of change topics and go into whining, and again, trying to connect it to the Q&A. The overall question being, is whining learned? And how do you handle that? And if we want to connect it to a story, someone wrote in regarding whining, having a 3-year-old and a 1-week-old. Congrats, you are in it. Bedtime with our 3-year-old has been really hard for the past 5 to 6 months. She only responds to threats/yelling. We try to stick to the same evening routine, but she delays bedtime for a long time, either wanting 10 books, running, jumping, crying to not brush teeth. Most nights the evening ends with either me or my partner getting very frustrated and having harsh language with her, which feels terrible. How can we keep firmer boundaries at bedtime when she fights the routine so much and only responds to yelling and threats? Man,
To start off, your first question was about like, is whining learned?
yeah, start there,
Um,
please.
Yeah, and I don't know that if it's learned, but it's definitely reinforced, right? So like, maybe when our kid is 18 months old and their like language is developing and they're like play and like get access to the plate because we're so excited that they're engaging in language, and so that can sort of continue even though they're getting older and the expectations change. So yeah, it definitely can be reinforced, especially for access-based whines. In terms of this like nighttime scenario specifically, we want to be careful about holding the boundary only once we get to the yelling or threatening, because then we're teaching, like, it's called stimulus pairing. You're pairing the hard boundary with the with the loud vocalizations. So the function of that we want to determine, is the function to escape bedtime or is the function your attention? Which I would venture to guess it might be a little bit of attention. So something like building in proactive. One of my recommendations when we talk about bedtimes is like doing your whole bedtime routine and then setting a timer for 6-7 minutes, and that's our like get your snack, if you want one more book, snuggle, tuck in stuffed animals, and when that timer is done, then we're done. And then also talking about reinforcement for staying in their room. Personally, I remove the expectation of sleep and just focus on staying in their room quietly. Usually sleep comes, but you do have to monitor that, because if they're partying until 2 a.m., that won't work.
Yeah. And what about like the like it's kind of connected to threats and yelling, but the counting. So like I'm asking selfishly. The counting is the only thing that works in my household. And to Kelly's point earlier, like if I get to 5, that's like no Spider-Man this week. And it sucks for me because I'm like, sometimes I just need one episode of Spidey and his amazing friends, and I can't do it. But it's the only thing that works. And now he's like, don't count. But I'm like, well, then don't make me and listen. But anyway, is that wrong?
The worst is when you start counting and you don't know what the threat or consequence is going to be, and you just start count down, and you're like, oh,
I was just gonna say Lily's not there yet, but she's gonna get to a point where he's like, you count, and then nothing happens.
I know. Yeah, I need to like have a running
We'll figure it out, but yeah.
Armstrong, the board needs like consequence tiles.
Well, the goal is that you show it so that you don't,
yeah.
but yes, I'm just.
By the way, we use it every day. Anyway,
so glad.
Haley, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna, for this one, like, I think we're so aligned with Charm Spring in that like structuring a routine visually for kids is so important, especially around the bedtime routine. We have our visual routine scheduler that does like a morning routine and a bedtime routine for after school, and just allowing kids to have more ownership over that time period instead of them feeling like they're going against like your expectations or your schedule for them just might be a really interesting intervention to try. But when you kind of give them the power and the choice, it can diffuse a lot of those meltdowns and outbursts.
And I think the visual component of that is super helpful too. I think so much is abstract for kids. Like they don't realize that like they're pushing it an hour past bedtime, you know, often. And when it's just like, these are the things I have to do in my head, you know, but being able to like see it and check it off, or whatever tool you're using, I think is really helpful. I just relate so much to, you know, nothing works until I get to the yelling or threats. I feel like there's so much before that are signs that, you know, that might be what you have to do. And so like, if you're thinking, you know, what I'm saying, you know, it's going to end up resulting in that, like you kind of have an inkling, right? Like Lily, that's why you're kind of doing the countdown, you know, you're like, okay. And I read somewhere recently, like if you have to say something 5 times, it's not going to end positively. You're going to get increasingly frustrated. They're not going to just listen on the 6th time. So what can we do when like the 2nd time you realize like nothing is going to get through to them? That's helped me so much because we're sort of like creating an intervention before we get to that 5th plus time, or the countdown, or what I say is, don't make me say it again. And I'm like, this is so my parents who never ended up doing anything. It's just this like empty threat that sounds just so not me. Like what is going to happen? Like, I don't even know. It's just reflexive. But anyway, there's so much I could do before that. So I'll recognize now, like I've said this twice, like they are totally ignoring me. And usually I don't mean that we can always do this, but like just even the proximity, like they're usually like, we're usually doing this because we're like on the other side of the house or room or apartment or whatever. And like the connection is so needed before they say goodbye for the night. We forget that that's such a separation. And I mean this for like any age, you know, like an 8-year-old, I have a 7-year-old, that usually on the 2nd time where I'm like, they are just not listening. If I go closer and say, hey guys, I don't think you heard me, but this is the 2nd time I'm asking you to brush your teeth. Can we all go together? And I'm not saying always having to do that, but just once in a while, it just diffuses this pattern that we're all kind of relating to right now of like, nothing is working. And I'm saying this 10 times over everything.
This question in the Q&A kind of connects, and the counting for me is like when we're in a rush and it's like, okay, but we need to go to school. So it's like either put the Tony box down and put your shoes on, or I'm going to count because we have to go to school. And this person said, my 4-year-old has a pattern of throwing a tantrum or almost weaponizing incompetence during times where we are under a time pressure. For example, refusing to walk unless I carry him. And when we need to get to school, get to the bus stop, get to the appointment, in those moments, we don't have the time to stop and fully process. How do I manage these behaviors without just giving in and carrying him?
Ooh, this one's a tough one. I'd love to hear what Mandy has to say on this one. I'm like, I made a child sit down in the middle of Disneyland and not he was 10 at the time, but sat down because we weren't going to his ride that he wanted to ride first, and he had to wait in line for all of his siblings' choices first.
Yeah,
So he
my mind
recognized
went to
this.
like bribery. So Mandy,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say first then, like your first, so first then is like something less preferable followed by something more preferable. And it can be a really, really low first, like in your with the 4-year-old, yeah, like maybe like first put your plate in the dishwasher, or then I'll carry you, or first with something, there'd be some sort of expectation. And the idea there is like if that behavior keeps occurring, you can increase your first to get access to the then. But again, like similar to the, like I would try not to, again, I definitely do try not to give into the like, give me a lollipop. We want to try not to give into the like, I'm not moving. Like, okay, well then I'll pick you up. But like, oh, you can stand up and say, pick me up, please, or you can walk to the door. First walk to the door, then I'll pick you up, that sort of thing. So that's where I would start.
Yeah. I would just also reiterate, I'm like, I love that answer. And I'm like trying to apply it to myself because again, I'm thinking of my hammerhead boy who pushes the limits and the weaponizing incompetence. I just have to laugh because the amount of times that I'm like, okay, when he knows he has some form of power or like control because we're time crunched or something is going on, you better believe he is savoring every minute of that. And what is interesting, just on a deeper level to think about, is, that's coming from him and that he is feeling powerless a lot of times in his life, right? Like, and that is his bigger fear. That's what's driving, like, I feel powerless all the time. Well, guess what? I'm going to make you feel I see my now I'm going to make you feel powerless. And then I'm all of a sudden responding the way that he's responding to me when I'm making him feel powerless. So one of the things, we've gone to therapy too, my son and I, and one of the things that we're working on is accepting nurture, right? Like getting in there and spending time with him. It's like a lot of times therapists will like say, 10 minutes of special time where it's just your direct attention with them because
no phone.
no phone, really like being with your child and giving them your full attention, reflecting back what they're doing so they feel seen and understood. That alone can make such a huge difference to just diffuse later struggles that become power struggles around getting back at or evening the field for times when you're in those difficult moments. And so where these techniques will work, if there's a longer standing pattern, which, hello, I have that going with my son, I have to up the consistency, but then also be aware of what are the things I'm doing outside of this time to help break down that deeper idea and belief that around power and powerlessness, to empower him in different ways, to lead in different ways, so that there's this balance outside of these moments where he feels like he's in control and he is in control, or he's leading us in something, sort of flipping the script. And that's lessened the power struggles later too.
Yeah, and I would just add from my experience teaching, I had a little bit older kiddos, more like middle and high school, but I think it applies. The moment that a child might have like blown out of a classroom or just completely refused to do something. I worked in a day treatment school where it was for the most kind of extreme behaviors before a child might be placed in a residential facility because of like safety concerns and mental health concerns inside and outside of the school. But our strategy was always that if and when a kid refused to do something completely and they needed to take a break, they actually weren't going to be able to take a break. They could take a break, but then they weren't going to just get out of whatever the situation was. And then actually a behavior coach would switch me out. And then I would even go and enter into those break rooms with them and just sit next to them, be like, we have all day. We can just sit here. And I know a lot of times as parents, when we're trying to get out of the house, we don't have all day. We can't wait. But a lot of times then the conversation turned into kind of collaborative problem solving on what they were wanting to accomplish and what they were trying to do in that moment. And then natural consequences always came into play as well. And I know natural consequences is a big topic in the world of parenting. I know our school really loved the love and logic. That if you look up love and logic, a lot of it is intertwined with natural consequences. And we have some really great blog posts post content on Slumberkins around it if you're
Maybe
just
we'll
looking for
share
more.
one in the DM after this also.
Yeah.
I'll,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great.
I think you make a great point though. Like ultimately it does kind of come down to function, right? So if the function of that was escape, right, got to come back to that demand. Otherwise, and to your point, like we can wait. I don't care when you come back to it, but we're not going to go play soccer until we've whatever done the math assignment or whatever that might look like. So same thing with your children. I think the biggest two functions to differentiate are attention and escape, and both of those you want to attend to differently, because with attention you want to remove your attention and outline how to get it back. So we're teaching them how to access your attention appropriately. So being like, you know, my daughter, it was jammies. And we were going back and forth about the jammies, and I felt like it was access. So I was holding the line and I was so proud of myself. And then I had to go to another room to do laundry, and I removed myself completely, and she came down in the right jammies. So I was like, ooh, that was about my attention. But if the function is escape and I'm like gonna remove myself, they're gonna be like, sweet, see ya. So you just have to tease that out a little bit because those need to be intervened differently.
Yeah.
Great.
Can I add one thing? I know
Sure.
that on this, just that, of course, I feel empathy for this, like the fact that, yeah, you've said weaponizing incompetence, like I feel those moments of like, but I also believe that your child does, right? Like you've stated that it's like under times of pressure. And so that's often when we can't give connection to our kid, right? We're like sort of on autopilot. We got to put on the shoes, we got to go, we got to catch the bus. And so this is a tool that your child's learned to use, right? When like nothing else has really worked. And this is not blame. This is like, we have on our blinders when we're under pressure to get somewhere, right? Like no one can stop us. And I think it's actually pretty incredible. And I'm not trying to put a positive spin on it, that your child has learned like this is a way actually to get my mom to slow down, right? Like, and so one time, the next time this happens, to not give in, which I don't believe it's giving in, right? It's just how, you know, we want to teach him to replace this tool that he's learned. So if the giving into you feels like picking him up, don't pick him up, be there with him. I don't mean in the middle of the road, but if he's like sat on the side of a curb or a front stoop, sit down with him. I'm not going to pick you up. I think you really want me to slow down, or you want to tell me something or whatever it is. I'm going to sit here with you. It's not rewarding. It's not giving in. It's like trying to tackle this tool that he's learned to use and replace that. What else can we do when you really want mommy to slow down? Maybe put up your hand and say, stop sign, mommy, you know, something to like get us out of that, which we all get into, this like autopilot.
I love that. And also like what they don't know is like you're in a rush, they have to get to school, you have to make the bus stop so you can get to this meeting so that you can make it to your doctor's appointment on time. Like in your head, like of course there's so many things, but in that moment they don't understand or know that.
Totally. Yeah.
Lily, can I just jump in about the functions really quick because I see
Yeah,
that.
I was just, yes, please.
Yeah. So there's 4 functions of behavior: attention. I want somebody's attention. That can largely learned helplessness, prompt dependency, delay tactics. Escape. I want to get away from somebody. I want to get away from something. I want to get away from a chore. Access to tangibles, toys, candy, food, any of that sort of thing. And then the last one, sensory. I call it automatic sensory. They're interchangeable, but those behaviors are behaviors that are internally reinforced. So attention, escape, and access are all externally reinforced. So some examples of sensory is thumb sucking, nail biting, stimming, any of that sort of thing. That being said, the function of the behavior depends on the context under which it's occurring. So I have a child that sucks her thumb. That's an automatic behavior. Her little sister comes over to me and sticks her thumb in her mouth. That's not an automatic behavior. That's a sensory that's an attention-seeking behavior because I respond to it with her sister. So just be mindful about the condition under which the behavior is occurring determines the function.
Great. Yeah. Thank you for addressing that. The last thing that I think I want us to end on, and it's because like, yes, we are so in it with our kids, but like a big thing about Auggie and like the message that we want to come through is like, you need to prioritize yourself too. And I think like a lot of times we're human, we react to things, and then there's immense guilt. And I actually just saw Penn Badgley, I think he was on Call Her Daddy's podcast, and he like had this moment with his toddler and then like stepped back and realized like, you know what, this kid is 3.5, like let me apologize to the kid. And he said that like it completely reset the moment. So I guess like in moments of extreme guilt as a parent, when your behavior wasn't what you wanted in the moment, how can you address that with your child to set like just the foundation of your relationship up for success, that like parents too make mistakes?
I think for us, we have a whole character built around this. It's called Repair Bear. And it comes with a script that is an apology to your child after you've blown up at them. And,
Right.
yeah, it's one of those things that I think a lot of us grew up in households where we were never apologized to as kids. And I think it's something that's new. It's a cycle breaking thing that I think we're all kind of realizing that really goes a long way. And I think having Kelly as a marriage and family therapist and best friend is so great, because a lot of times when I've blown up at my kids, I just think I've completely messed up and I go into a shame spiral. And one of our most requested creatures at Slumberkins from the mom community is a shame skunk. Like go into the shame spiral side after you need to repair. But I think the best thing, and you probably explain it best, is that like when we show up in repair with our children, that is the most important part of building that secure and emotional safety relationship aspect with our children.
Yeah. I think it came when I was in my master's program, and I was terrified to go in and see clients for the first time because I'd learned all these theories and what I was going to do. And I was like, oh my God, but what if I do it wrong? Or what if I get it wrong? And somebody's like, no, that's not it, you know? And I was so terrified. And I remember my supervisor saying, when it comes to relationships, repair is what deepens the relationship. It deepens trust. So taking accountability, saying, oh, I got that wrong, and keeping curious, like your intention open and curious about trying to understand that other person, even when you've made a mistake or you've said something wrong or done something wrong, deepens the bond between you. And I think that carries completely over to our children, especially when we're on such different levels of like thinking and development, but on a human level, that connection piece is what everything grows from. So we can model what repair is, how to do it with accountability without going back on what we're saying or not having boundaries. We can still connect and be connected on that level, and then move into those and consequences or and structure and boundaries. But that connection and repair is so important.
Yeah, I think in our house, we try to focus on name without blame. So, like, naming the problem without blaming somebody else. So, I try to do that with modeling, like, I shouldn't have lost my cool. And I try to outline replacement behavior. I should have blah, blah, blah. What should I have done instead? But then also, like, really naming the problem without assigning blame to a person. And so, that's something I work with my kids too on, like, sibling conflict. Like, the tower fell, right? Like, supposing it was accidental, like we don't need to blame someone. You tripped. It's not somebody's fault. Like, what can we do next time? I should have slowed down. I can take more space, whatever that might look like.
Oh yeah, the sibling blame is always, even if it's across the room, it's like, I fell, it's your fault. You're like, oh.
On that note, I feel like it's also similar in marriages, right? Like when you miss a flight or do something like, and that's something that I work on all the time, but I don't want to digress. I will say that two things that really help when I'm repairing to remember is there's no place for the word but in an apology.
Yeah.
We can't justify our behavior by attaching it to their behavior. So that's really helped me. An apology is truly, I'm sorry that I did this or whatever it is, without being like, but you did this, for it to be really authentic. And then, and not to just be this like martyr, I think then you can talk about, next time that I'm having a hard time when we're not brushing our teeth, whatever it is, then you can troubleshoot when everyone's calm. And then another thing that I think is important is to really like humanize, just the process of working on oneself. So something that has helped and resonates with my girls is, I'm working on it. I'm working on being more patient, or, because you don't want to overpromise, like mommy can never, whatever. You just don't want to get into that pattern of feeling like you need to be perfect in your responses, because it inevitably will happen again. So just saying something like that, like I'm working on, deep breaths or having more patience or whatever it is.
Ladies, this was like half amazing for me in terms of lessons, and I feel like half a little bit of therapy. So thank you so much. And I'm seeing the questions in the chat coming about like the products and the different types of how to respond to different behaviors. And maybe Mandy, we can connect and get some language for the follow-up DM to better address what people are asking and make sure we're answering everyone's questions. And then Kaylee, if you want to send me, oh, it's coming back in June. Okay, the Repair Bear is
Repair Bear is back in June, but I'll send you the article on natural consequences.
Okay, yes,
And we have the poem up on the site. It's a free resource.
The Repair Bear poem.
Yeah, there's
Oh,
a
yeah.
Repair Bear poem
Yeah.
on our website under free resources. So if you don't have the stuffy yet, you can help. That's a nice.
Just grab any bear you have and just reuse the poem.
Okay, great.
I
And
want that.
we'll send all of the info for Charm Spring as well in the follow-up DM. And yeah, we will definitely do this again. So thank you so much, Kaylee, Kelly, Jenny, Mandy, for being here.